Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. This is Dr. Chia-Ying Chou, and I'm tuning in today to share a little bit more about the workshop that I will be doing starting in June 9th, 2023. So this workshop is called a Compassionate Mind Training Workshop, and this is tailored for people experiencing hoarding and cluttering. And let me share a little bit more about the intention of offering this workshop. So since 2020, or actually even before 2020, I've been cultivating this protocol that is called compassion-focused therapy for hoarding. And that is a 20-week long program that is designated for treating hoarding disorder. And so that program has been running through my practice and in my previous research position. It's been running for 5-6 years now since the first group began. And so since that protocol is a treatment modality, so I can only offer that group in California because that's where I'm licensed. And over the years, a lot of people ask me, I live in this other different state, or I even live in this different country. Can you offer any treatment for hoarding for us? And I can't because I'm not licensed outside of California. However, I do want to offer something that we can do cross the boundaries of the state lines or country lines. And so then the thought of compassionate mind training occurs to me. So let me tell you a little bit more about what compassionate mind training is and how that's related to compassion-focused therapy. So compassion-focused therapy is developed by this British psychologist. His name is Paul Gilbert. And so it's a form of psychotherapy. But in this form of psychotherapy, there are a lot of psychoeducation and a lot of skills and exercises that can be extracted from the therapy, the nature of therapy, and be done in a workshop kind of format. So in this Compassionate Mind Training workshop, we will be learning a lot of the materials that is covered in compassion-focused therapy groups that I'm running in California. So we are going to extract a lot of the good materials that is to do with psychoeducation in terms of how our brains are wired and how our brain is evolved through the history of evolutionary. And so we are going to talk about that and relate that to our hoarding challenges. And how can we, through that kind of frame, having a different perspective in understanding why we have this challenge that we call hoarding or cluttering. And hopefully coming to the understanding that actually a lot of these difficulties is not of my choosing. I'm dealing with this because a lot of the genetic, a lot of how my brain is wired, a lot of environmental factors, that is not of my choosing. So it's not our fault, but it's our responsibility now to take care of it. Because if we don't take care of it, who else is going to take care of it for us? So that's the psychoeducation piece. And also we are going to learn a lot about emotion regulation. That's also a very important component in CFT, compassion-focused therapy. And we are going to use that in this workshop format. We are going to do that in a skills training style. So the difference between therapy and workshop is that we are not going to go deep into your personal history, deep into your psychological pain. However, even though we don't dive that deep, but we are going to offer some skills, some tools, some exercises that you can practice at home by yourself after the workshop ends so that you can use it to help yourself. So that's the intention of preparing and offering for this workshop. And I really hope that especially people outside of California can join me on this, because I hear you that there are a lot of needs to help with hoarding, but there aren't that many therapists currently available to work with this special condition. So if this sounds like something that could help you, welcome to join us. So now I'm gonna share my screen with you all so that you can see the registration page. And the reason why I want to do that is I'm gonna walk you through the learning agendas. And because we can only put so much in writing, so I would like to walk you through those learning agendas so that I can verbally explain what those things mean. And then that way you can know better whether this workshop is going to be suitable or helpful for you or not. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, so hopefully you can all see my screen right now. So this is a registration page, and I will put that registration page in the caption below. So after this recording, you'll find it. And so here are where I say what we'll be covering in the workshop. So the first thing is we are gonna talk about what hoarding is and why do people have this difficulty. And not only we are going to talk about this in the more just general psychological education about hoarding and how the DSM-5 system define hoarding or diagnose hoarding. Not only we're going to cover that, we are specifically going to talk about why do people have these difficulties. So we're going to look into the psychological factors, the social and environmental factors, and we are also going to, like I said earlier, tie all of these difficulties into how our brains are wired. So let me give you an example. So for example, we are going to talk about how there's this part of our brain that is older or more historical in the evolutionary history. And that part of our brain is very good at responding to fear. And whenever we see any sign, the brain is like, oh, agitated and all ready to run away and all ready to do a lot of life-saving things. And then there's also this new brain, relatively new in the evolutionary history. So in that new brain, whenever the old brain is scared, the new brain is trying to solve the problems constantly, relentlessly. So whenever we're scared, the new brain, whether you're aware or not, the new brain is going like, okay, you don't feel safe. We need to accumulate more. You don't feel safe. We need to be more prepared for all kinds of situations. And to be more prepared, we need to have more. So if this resonates with you, know that, yeah, that's how our brains are wired. When there's fear, there's this smarty brain trying to help, but sometimes not in a very helpful way. But all in all, they are coming from good intentions. But how do we recognize how sometimes this way of how our brain is wired is causing us troubles and causing us more suffering than help? So that's one thing that we are gonna discuss and explore in this workshop. And if you see the second thing here, the second agenda here, so we are going to explore how does our difficulty with hoarding or cluttering have something to do with the way our brain are wired. So actually that's what I just talked about. Okay, and number 3, how can we understand and become more aware of our emotions and mental states? So being more aware and being able to name our emotions is a very important part of emotion regulation. So a lot of times we just react, right? So think about times when you think about just the thought of opening a box and start sorting through them, just the thought running through your head, you are already checked out. Or just the thought of doing that, you are already, next thing you're thinking about is what other things that seems more time sensitive or seems more important that you have to take care of, be it helping another person, go do something, hang out in the market, or do something else, anything else other than sorting that box. So a lot of times we only see, I thought I was gonna sort this box, but then I realized I was spending 2 hours helping a friend doing some other things. We only recognize the behaviors, and sometimes we recognize those behaviors only afterward, only later. And so the gap here is what happens between you having that thought and you being away from your task. Usually there's anxiety, usually there's overwhelm, usually there is frustration, usually there's sadness or fear, all different kinds of emotions there. So we're trying to find a way to practice so that we can name and recognize the emotions while they are happening in real time. That way, they are not affecting us, making us run away without us knowing. That way we know, oh, okay, I'm trying to run away. What happens? Oh, I'm scared. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling very sad. So when we name it, we have a better chance to take a different next step to address them rather than being ruled by them. So that's what I meant by how can we understand and become more aware of our emotions and mental states. And then in this workshop, something very important is we are going to discover and discuss what compassion is, and most importantly, what compassion is not. A lot of times people think, oh, compassion means being nice or being kind. And sometimes even people think compassion means always say yes, always be the nice person. So we are going to learn to recognize how sometimes being nice is not definitely compassionate. For example, you can say, I am being nice to myself. I'm taking care of myself because sorting things makes me feel uncomfortable. So being nice to myself means maybe I don't do that. Maybe I do something else that's more fun or more satisfying. And compassion here in this particular modality that we are using, the compassion here actually means how can we recognize suffering, not just the suffering in the moment, but suffering in the long term. And how can we recognize that, be sensitive to that, and how can we address and prevent and alleviate our suffering? So in that example that I just gave, when you are about to sort something and you notice discomfort arising, and running away may seem like it's preventing or it's alleviating your suffering in the moment. However, the wisdom part of compassion we're trying to cultivate here is to recognize, okay, if you do this, it may make you feel better in the moment, but it actually creates you more, or it actually prolongs your suffering. So compassion here, we have 4 different key elements that we are trying to cultivate in this workshop. The first one I already mentioned is wisdom. We want to have the kind of wisdom to know what is the right course of action that will actually relieve our suffering rather than only a band-aid fix. Number 2, we want to cultivate emotional strength. And there are different methods we are going to do and practice to do that. So we are going to cultivate our emotional strength. So when we're overwhelmed, we don't have to run away. For example, see that just like you're lifting weight. So when you're emotionally weighed down, when you just feel like I need to give up, I have to run away, how can we cultivate your emotional muscles so you can hold more discomfort. So you can go through what you set out to do despite the discomfort. So that's key elements number 2, emotional strength. And key element number 3 is the commitment. So just like when we think about helping a friend, if their tasks are hard, if we are committed to helping them, we are relentless. We can say, okay, you can take a break, or I can take a break, but after a break, I come back because I'm committed to helping you. So we want to cultivate the same kind of commitment in helping, addressing, relieving our own suffering. We want to be our best friend. And finally, the last thing that we want to cultivate is a warm and friendly attitude toward ourselves and even toward our hoarding challenges. Because most of us have this harsh inner critic that is there, ready to go all the time. So that is actually in the background that causes us to shut down, to procrastinate, right? So if you really recognize you don't procrastinate just for fun, right? You don't want to procrastinate either if you have a choice. But sometimes the inner critic is so harsh, you just become paralyzed. And so that's why we want to cultivate a different relationship with ourselves that is friendly, encouraging, and warm. So that's what I meant by what compassion is and what compassion is not. And now let's continue to look. So the last, one of the last ones is how can we develop a more compassionate and encouraging internal dialogue and relationship with ourselves when we face hoarding or cluttering difficulties. So I think I covered this point just a few seconds ago about how we want to cultivate a different relationship with ourselves that's warm, encouraging, and compassionate and supportive rather than judgmental. And we are going to discover what skills can we practice to help us regulate emotions when we feel overwhelmed or just want to run away from our challenges. So we are going to explore and practice some somatic exercises. We are going to do some breath work, and we are also going to do some body work, like how can we use our body to ground ourselves. And when we are all so much going on in our head, like that makes us, oh, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, and we never finish anything. So there's a lot of things like very fleeting thoughts in our head. Some people describe themselves having ADHD, and some people describe, yeah, I have attention issues, I can't seem to focus on something. And then, yes, there may be ADHD going on in the background, but even if there's ADHD, the practice still applies, okay? So we want to see how we can slow down our mind by becoming more grounded in our body. So when I start to take deep breath, or when you start to take deep breath, you probably will recognize, oh, my mind kind of slowed down, or at least I'm noticing how fast my mind is going. So we want to use some mindfulness and somatic practices in this workshop to help us regulate our body and our mind and our emotions, help us feel more safe, more embodied, so that we are not carried away by our thinking mind. We're not carried away by fear and run away because of that. So hopefully this information is useful to you, whether you sign up to the workshop or not. And I just wanted to pop in and tell you more about this workshop. And if this feels like something that will benefit you, so the start date is June 9th. And like I said, the workshop is going to be online. So wherever you are in the world, as long as the time is not too crazy for the time zone that you are in, I look forward to seeing you there. Take care.